What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dad Needs to Talk. I'm your host, Robert, and today we're going to be talking about Food Night. Now, this is a series that I originally talked about in a YouTube short 3 years ago. July 2023, I did a very little small short after I started reading it, and it has been a very long road coming back full circle to talking about it again because since then, in the fall of 23, Viz officially licensed it, and the first physical release came out in June of 2024, so 2 years ago. And it took until January of 26 for all the missing chapters to be filled in on the Viz app. So it's been a lot of, like I said, been a long journey to get back to the series. We're right now in the lead up to the anime being officially revealed and stuff. Because as of the time of me recording this, they're doing slow teases to the full reveal in the coming days. But I was like, you know what? I feel the energy of Full Night in the air. So I wanted to revisit it and talk about it. So this first episode, I'm going to be talking about the contents of the first three volumes, which go from chapter 1 to chapter 26. Like I said earlier, all of the chapters are on the Viz app, and also they're up to volume 9 in physically released volumes, and I think volume 10 is coming out in a few months. So yeah, so like I said, just very exciting. So Full Night, what is Full Night? So Full Night is pretty much like a sci-fi futuristic dystopian thriller series where in this timeline or in this distant, very distant future, something happened where there are these dark clouds blocking out the sun. Most of the planet is pretty much stuck in like a winter state. And of course, with no sun, a lot of the natural trees and vegetation of the world started dying off. So they created this process. I think is it called florization or something like that, where typically people who might basically be on the verge of death. So let's say like you have a terminal illness or something like that, and you have a short time to live. Well, they will implant these various plant seeds in your body, and typically it takes usually around 2 years. Your body slowly starts transforming into a plant, and then eventually you fully become a plant, thus providing more oxygen for the population. Because, like I said, the sun is pretty much blocked out, natural trees and stuff are more or less gone. So they came up with this way to still produce oxygen. And so, as you can imagine, this is a pretty crazy world and situation for these characters and stuff to be in. Um, because for one, anybody that signs up for this program, they get 10 million yen. Because it's pretty much like, hey, you're pretty much giving up your body more or less for the greater good. And hey, here's a bunch of money for you to spend and enjoy your last couple of years of life however you please. So that leads us to a couple of our two main characters, uh, Toshinori Kamiya and Yomiko Harai. Now, these two characters who Kamiya is on the on the cover of Volume 1 and Yomiko is on the cover of Volume 2. These two have been close since they were in maybe like middle school or something like that, maybe even before, but since a very young age. And they're now both, I think, like mid 20s or something like that. So, over the course of their lives, they've kind of branched off on different paths. Where Yomiko, she kind of stuck to her academics and stuff, and eventually she ends up working at one of these facilities that does the procedure and stuff for transforming people into the plants and stuff. Whereas Toshinoru, he's kind of had very hard struggle of a life because, for one, his mother is very mentally ill, and the different things, of course, in this society, people have to pay for and stuff, like his mom's medication, just basic needs and stuff to live. And one of the crazy things in this world, on top of just regular rent, uh, property taxes, and just general life necessities or whatever, there is also now a oxygen tax, which is just insane that you literally have to pay for or getting taxed for the air. And it seems like this oxygen tax is being used to fund this company that's doing these procedures and stuff. So that's basically the kind of start and setup for this world. So where things start to get kind of very crazy and very interesting is Toshinoru pretty much he's kind of at wit's end because his mother's medication has run out. He's short on money, and basically he comes up with a false story claiming he's about to die just so that he can have the procedure done so that he can get the 10 million yen. Well, of course, like I said, he ends up running to his old classmate Yomiko, and they do the procedure and stuff. And shortly after, he gets robbed. A lot of the money he just got gets taken from him, and he ends up getting a job working at the facility because he discovers he ends up getting some very weird ability that seemingly nobody else has ever gotten, at least where I'm at right now in the story, where he is able to talk to, or at least starting off, communicate and hear the thoughts of these people that have been transformed because basically, at least for the first like few years after the fluorization has taken over your body, they say that you're still conscious, but you're a plant. You can't move or do nothing, whatever. But it seems like the people are still conscious somewhere in there, and they're saying stuff, but it's just gibberish to the normal person. Well, Toshinoru, he is able to understand them, and as things have progressed through these chapters, he ends up in a way kind of being able to communicate with them, which will play big into something I'm gonna talk about in a little bit. And so they end up, like I said, that's how he ends up getting hired on because, for one, Yomiko, she has somebody or something that she is trying to find, and so she wants him to help her. And so that's where the story and stuff kind of starts off. And so they go on a few different cases that deal with these transformed people and stuff. And throughout, because I'm not going to go every single beat by beat, but just kind of broadly talk about everything in these first three volumes. But there is a situation where there is a string of murders that is happening. And I think right now, I think the count is over 20 murders that have happened. But of course, it's a very odd case because there's very little traces or evidence or anything left behind at the crime scene. And so everybody's like, what the heck is going on? Well, there ends up being a victim that they end up finding and saving, or at least finding before they fully die. And while Toshinoru and Yomiko are leaving the hospital after that situation happens, uh, the villain or the murderer shows up, and it ends up being a transformed person who they've codenamed Ivy because they've transformed into a full on like an ivy plant with like the vines and stuff, whatever. But they're just able to still fully move around, function, and do all that stuff. And so there ends up like I said, becoming a hunt for this murderer and stuff. And like I said, in this first encounter, and this was one of the it's been like I said, it's been 3 years since I've read this, but there are definitely a few key moments that still stuck out in my mind over all these years, and one of them was the first time Ivy appeared and kind of like snuck up behind them. Well, Ivy ends up stabbing Yomiko with one of his vines, and just narrowly misses her heart, but punctures, and does a lot of internal damage to some of her organs and stuff. And so that's how they Toshinori them end up becoming the first people to actually see the creature and stuff, whatever. And that's a big break in the case of like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. And so, of course, Toshinori, through all this, they end up teaming up with some people from another division of this company and stuff, whatever. And there's all these new characters introduced with different ideologies or different motives and different stuff, because there ends up being also this group of people, kind of like I don't want to say like a cult, but basically like this following building up of people who are against the transformations and stuff, whatever, and talking about how there's another way, or there's got to be another way for humanity to survive without doing this and all the things like that. But anywho, all this to say, it just continues to spiral over the course of several days and weeks and stuff, whatever, until Toshinori, um, as he continues to kind of like learn and hone his abilities, he's able to finally kind of pinpoint where Ivy is, gets to the location, find a horrendous scene, but then some of the other officers and detectives and stuff show up, and because he's kind of gone AWOL for a while because he kind of just went off on his own, they one of the detectives pretty much like remove him from the case or whatever. Well, then Ivy shows up, and then pretty much Toshinori ends up being able to try to talk and communicate with Ivy, and learning that it's seemingly that this is actually a kid that is within all these. They got transformed into this vine creature and stuff, whatever, and trying to learn more information about why they're doing the killings and different stuff, whatever. Well, one of the detectives fires off a round, so they ended up creating these incendiary fire bullets, basically, that lights Ivy on fire. Ivy, in his panic, falls out of like the building that they were in, lands in a civilian populated area, and just goes haywire, just whipping the vines around, trying to get the fire off of him. And I think he ends up killing like 30 something people in that process, and kind of dying off. And so that's kind of where the story has left off with where I'm at right now. And so I'm very excited to continue moving forward, because I only got to maybe like the early 30s, if that, chapter wise, years ago, because I was reading it, like I said, before it was officially licensed and stuff. So chapter releases was kind of hit or miss here and there. And then, like I said at the top, when it finally got picked up, there was the big, huge chapter gaps, that they weren't updating until the physical volumes were coming out. So yeah. So like I said, it's very exciting to now be back on the road to catching up to where I left off, and then moving on and going forward and seeing where this goes. And like I said, very exciting times, because like I said, the anime is imminent. By the time y'all are hearing this, we've probably already gotten the full trailer, because it's happening in a couple of days from when I'm recording this. So I'll probably talk about that later on in a different episode, a different video. But I definitely, just like I said, wanted to talk about Full Night, put this back on people's radars and stuff. Because like I said, with the anime coming up, and it seems like it's gonna be done by Sunrise Studio, and the glimpse and like the images and stuff that they've shown a little bit so far, it's looking amazing. Very unique art style take on the series. So very exciting for that to come. So, but without that being said, thank you so much for checking this out, and let me know if you have checked out Full Night. And if so, what do you think about it? So, like I said, I'm hoping to maybe do these every three volumes until I'm caught up and stuff. So, but we'll see. But for now, that's it. So I'll catch y'all in the next one. As I always say, treat yourself to something nice. Buy some food nights, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all be easy. Peace.